Hi, welcome. Are you ready for a story? Once upon a time, there was a good king and queen who ruled a happy kingdom with their daughter at their side. But one day, an evil wizard summoned a dragon to steal the princess and trap her in a tower. The king and queen were distraught and the kingdom fell into chaos. Then one day, a knight who was traveling the world arrived in the kingdom. He saw the terrible situation and decided to act. After many challenges, he defeated the wizard, freed the dragon, and released the princess. With the royal family reunited, the kingdom returned to prosperity, and everyone lived happily ever after. It sounds familiar, right? Storytelling has a fundamental power over us, deeply ingrained in our humanity and our experiences. Stories are the first ways that we learn information as children. They're the first things our parents teach us. Stories were the first ways that we made sense of the world tens of thousands of years ago through myths and legends. And storytelling is universal. All cultures have it in some form. We can relate to stories because they put information in a human context. We can understand that context better than rational data. And stories can entertain, they can convey information, and they can trigger emotional reactions. So telling stories can be useful in business, from good advertising to presenting yourself in a job interview to convincing the management to approve your proposal. Yet it's something that's rarely taught. So what's the difference between a good story and a bad story? Well, in general, a good story captures and holds our attention, activates on our emotions. It leads us down the author's chosen path, and we can relate to it, and it brings us to a conclusion. In contrast, a bad story is boring, has no pace or clear plot, and has no clear ending or an unsatisfying ending. So every story has a beginning, middle, and end, and many stories follow a very similar structure. So generally, the introduction gives some setting, some background, so everyone knows who is who and where they are, and it sets the rules and the groundwork for everything that comes after. The body presents some action, some threat, or some conflict, the drama. And in the conclusion, that threat is resolved, and the pathway to the future is revealed, so what happens after the story finishes. And authors and directors can play with the order and links of each part. So for example, George Lucas, when he made Star Wars, almost all of that introduction is just in the first minute in the yellow scrolling text, and almost the entirety of the movie is the body, is the rising action and the climax. In contrast, David Lynch's Dune, maybe the first half of that movie is just introduction, and it can be very confusing. The film Memento reverses the order of each of these elements. So the conclusion comes first, the body runs backwards, and the introduction is the last thing. So how do you build a story for business? So the first step may sound a little counterintuitive, but to construct a narrative for business, you want to start with where you want your audience to end. You want to ask yourself, what is the key takeaway that I want everyone to leave this room having? So it might be to understand a fact. You might want to convey some information. It might be getting them to make a decision, and particularly a decision in your favor. Or it might be just provoking an emotional reaction, particularly in advertising. Next, what you want to do is establish a common understanding. So you need to figure out at the introduction, at the beginning, what is the minimum amount of information that you need to convey to ensure that everyone has the same knowledge going in. So that may be some history, what happened before. It may be the current condition, the situation in your business, or it may just be some fact and data. But again, ideally we use less fact and data in storytelling than other formats. But everyone needs to be on the same page at the start to get to your ending. Don't assume that everyone knows what you know, and if they don't know what you know, they will never be able to follow you down the path you're setting for them. Finally, you want to build the action in the middle. Now, unlike Star Wars or Dune, you want to actually have this part the minimum that you can make it. So you need to figure out what the minimum amount of information is that you need to lead the audience from where they started at the introduction to the conclusion that you want them to reach, to connect the dots. Ideally, also, you want to use emotional triggers. Emotions can be positive or negative, so you can outline a threat or a conflict. You can outline a risk if something happens or doesn't happen, but you can also say what the opportunity is if something does happen, or what does the happy future look like if everything goes your way. Finally, you want to end on a call to action. So that call to action might be make a decision, take an action, give me some feedback, participate in this Q&A, or just simply come back more for more next time. Additionally, some extra tips. So we tend to put more information into business presentations than we actually need to, and that distracts from the flow and from the narrative. So you want to remove anything which isn't introduction, essential information driving you from the introduction to the conclusion and the call to action. Remember that, like I said, data and fact isn't emotional. If you have to present data and fact, embed it as a table and explain the relevance. Any data or fact has to be put in context. Data and fact by itself doesn't tell a story. And if you're trying to drive a decision, remember that people don't like to be trapped. So if you need someone to make a choice, give them at least 3 options. Something clearly bad that they don't want to choose, something clearly too optimistic that they'll never choose, and something just right in the middle, the Goldilocks scenario. So remember, start with where you want everyone else to finish, make a common start point, drive the narrative through efficient, dynamic supporting material which invokes emotion, and finish on a clear call to action. So I hope that was useful. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can check out much more information online and in many great books. And remember to come back for more. Like and subscribe. Thanks.